It's that time of the year again where we are all bright-eyed and excited to start a brand new bullet journal. This is the bullet journal that I will be using for this year. I got it from Archer & Oller's March subscription box, and it just has this cute monstera leaf on the cover page. I always feel like I put the most effort into coming up with my January themes because I want to start the year on the right note with the right theme, as most of us are probably feeling as well. This year though, I want to make my bullet journal a little simpler with less spreads, so I would just be setting out my cover page, calendar, and first weekly spread today. I was inspired by Jenny Journal's loose and scrapbooking style of journaling in the sense that there aren't a lot of structured or pre-planned spreads. So instead of simply using my bujo to keep track of tasks, I want to use it as more of a journaling tool as well. My theme for January is coffee. So the reason why I chose coffee as my theme is because I always associate it with starting a new day, like how coffee is needed to kickstart the day. I personally don't really need to drink coffee in the mornings, but this is just what I associate mornings with. So I decided to do this simple painting of a coffee cup by the window. And this is honestly what I will imagine a perfect morning to be. Me drinking a cup of tea or coffee and just looking out the window and chilling. But my mornings usually consist of me rushing to get to work on time, so this is really more of an expectations versus reality kind of situation. So I started out with a quick pencil sketch, and I was mostly trying to get the perspective and dimensions right at this point, following which I started to work on the background. I wanted to use lighter colors given that this is the beginning of a new year, so you can see me actually mixing more white to make the table color lighter at the start of the painting. And I am so sorry for the slightly blurry clips here. I just switched to a new camera and I am still getting used to it, but subsequent clips are from another angle, so that will be much clearer. This painting was also inspired by the coffee painting that I did in my Pantone challenge back in November 2022, so I found it really therapeutic to paint coffee, so I wanted to do it again for my bullet journal. If you would like to see the Pantone challenge video, the link will be in my description box below, so you can check it out after this video. I used my Canson watercolor paper for this painting, as I do for all my paintings that I don't do in my sketchbooks. It is 300 GSM cold pressed watercolor paper, which works great for gouache as well. I will link it below in my description box along with all other supplies I used in this video, and if I forgot to link anything, do let me know, and I will try my best to find those links. I really wanted to paint a really foamy kind of coffee, although somehow this kind of reminds me of hot chocolate instead, but I just started off with a dark brown before building it up with a lighter brown to create more volume and shape. I used white gouache for the foam, and to make it look really fluffy, I used a slightly darker and more desaturated brown to paint in the shadows of the foam. I finished this up with brown specks to look like chocolate sprinkles on the top of the foam, and this drink looked so delicious, it makes me crave some hot chocolate now. And lastly, I am working on the curtain in this painting. I painted the curtain such that there is a slight breeze coming in through the window. Curtains were something that I felt really intimidated to paint prior to doing my Pantone challenge, but I really enjoy painting curtains now. Honestly, curtains look pretty difficult to draw, but if you break it down into smaller sections, it becomes a lot more manageable. So first, I like to start off by painting a light grey for the areas where the curtain overlaps, and then go back with a darker grey to create more defined creases. And afterwards, I use a very light layer of white gouache for the rest of the curtains, and try not to go over it too much because I want that part of the curtain to look translucent, hence the background will have to show through a little, and working on the translucent part too much will cause the bottom layers of gouache to be reactivated, which will cause the painting to smudge. After I'm done with my painting, I'm just letting it completely dry. I'm just leaving it at the side and working on my calendar now. My calendar is super simple as well. I am just painting some coffee froth, is that what you call it, at the top part of the page. I used some washi tape to make sure the edges are really clean. I am using my watercolors for this painting. These are my Winsor & Newton watercolors, and I am mixing some yellow ochre and off-white for this, as well as some burnt umber and sepia mixed together. I am painting a layer of the off-white color first, and while it is still damp, I went back in with my yellow ochre. I am using the wet in wet technique for this painting, and I found that it worked super well because it allowed the colors to take a life of its own and look even more like coffee. I am just slowly building up the colors here and making sure I am working relatively fast so that the paint will still be wet. Afterwards, I wait for the paint to fully dry before going back in with my burnt umber and sepia to paint these random circles. And afterwards, when the circles are completely dry, I will go back in with my white Uniball signal pen to add the little highlights to just create a little bit more interest for this painting. I am using my light brown acrylograph pen to write out the dates, and I later went back in with my kilograph to highlight the dates that correspond to Saturdays and Sundays so that I will be able to tell what day each date falls on, if that makes sense. I am really loving the style of setting up my bujo so far. I am hoping that this setup will help me to use my bullet journal more. I really didn't like what I was creating in my bujo last year, which caused me to stop using it. And towards the end, I was barely writing in my bujo as a result, so I'm really hoping that this year will be different. I am using my stamps to stamp in the word calendar and January, and I haven't used my stamps in such a long time, but I really like how it looks. I actually ran out of ink on my stamp pad, so I just used my brush marker to color the stamp before stamping it in. I think because it's gouache, the ink couldn't transfer as well as it normally does, so I went back in with my Sakura Pigment Micron pen to make the word more defined. And this is how it looks. I am so happy with how this turned out, and I am just pasting it in my bujo using double-sided tape. Moving on to my weekly spread, I did a rough sketch with my pencil, and then I started working on my ink sketch with my Sakura Pigment Micron pen. If I remember correctly, I went in with my 05 pen for the outline, and then went in with an 02 nib for the more detailed sketching. Subsequently, I used the 08 nib to color the coffee and parts of the sketch that had to be super dark. However, I forgot to press record for this part, so you can see how the final drawing looks later. This perspective was a little bit more difficult to do, and the circle of the coffee cup turned out a little wonky, but I am just gonna move on. I am curious to know what you guys' themes are for January, so do comment them down in the comment section below. I set up this entire weekly spread for the purpose of filming to post on YouTube, but for the rest of the spreads for January, I am going to fill the pages up day by day. As I explained at the start of the video, I want to take a more journaling approach for my bujo, where I write down my thoughts for the day on top of the usual to-do lists and tasks. As such, I would prefer to fill up my spreads day by day because some days will require more space than others, and I want to have that freedom to use as much space as I need, especially since I will want to add in some doodles or photos as well for certain days. But yeah, I took a pretty short time to set this up. The coffee ink sketch took the longest, but for the rest of the setup, everything was pretty simple and straightforward to do. Everything was just a mix of brown calligraph and acrylograph pens as well as fine liners, so it is super simple to do. If you guys don't have these pens though, don't worry, any markers will do as well. You can tell that I was just trying to stick to a brown color palette here, so yeah, any brown marker will achieve the same look as well. So here is my setup for January. I also posted my 2023 bullet journal setup, so do go check that out. It was also a really simple and fun setup. Have a good month and year ahead, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!